I mean, evaluating for me, a good course is a course where people are where you make them curious,
Mhm.
and that curiosity then leads to some yeah, new way of thinking about the past. And you can see very well whether a student picks up that kind of inspiration or not.
Yeah.
You see it in the written assignments, but you also see it in the discussions, and you see it in the kind of engagement that students bring in the courses, or during such excursions. And so yeah, it's not a hard criteria that I could define,
Yeah.
but it's very much about also what it leaves in terms of experiences and traces. And that's why I'm so happy when I hear or meet old students and say, oh, I still remember that course, because it was different, because it was something unexpected maybe, or something that went a little bit beyond of what you normally do at the university. So I think as I was a student, and then excursions were really important to me. So this was something, I think, is something that is more or less lost in academic education,
Yeah.
in my field, and I very much enjoyed those excursions. My favorite one was with a professor of medieval history, where it was about the crossing of the Alps in medieval times, and what it meant to people to cross that natural barrier. So we made a 10 days excursion with a backpack, and across the Alps ourselves on those medieval paths. So this really leaves a very huge impression
Yeah.
on you. Yeah, you have the discussions with the colleagues, with fellow students, professors, and yeah, you experience this knowledge bodily, so to speak. And yeah, that is, I think, missing in the very much modularized and school-like teaching environment we have nowadays.
The other day I got feedback from one of my papers that I submitted, and we were talking about expectations. Because when it comes to evaluation, first of all, it's from this world of assessment.
Yeah.
First of all, you put everyone on the same level and see who did better. And also, for me, the evaluation is just a reflective act. So only the person that participated can say. It's not something that I can see, and that was one of the points, and understand. I think if people participating, and me myself as one of them, are surprised by any outcome, is already this is like they are moved. I am moved by outcomes, whatever they are.
Yeah.
If something new it happens, takes place, something that was not before, if there is some novelty, yes, novelty is the key for me. And it can be nothing, not new knowledge, but maybe an insight or a funny moment, something that is out of the ordinary, and it's outside of the automatic. I think this is, if we can step out from just functioning or keep doing things in the same way, and we have the choice to do differently, and awareness to give that the space and the focus. This is for me the evaluation.
So I had created this a sense log. I only used it in the first 2 years. A sense log it's a questionnaire, and every time there was one sense or synesthesia involved. And then the students had to drink something, eat something, or touch something, and then answer questions about that. First, it was a multiple choice, and then they have to smell or touch again, and then it's open. So we can measure, okay, the second time and after the class, when they answer the same questions, suddenly they have a much broader vocabulary. And they could then see their own answers, so they could also see their own progress. So what I test in the end is when they do their virtual exhibition, did they actually include sensory impressions? Was there knowing by sensing? Did they learn something that they could not have learned had they only read about the topic? And that's how I test it. So their use of language, and did they trigger my senses in a way that I, as a teacher, also learned something I would not have learned hadn't they conveyed it through touch or smell or dance or
For grading, I think to not grade it with grades. We also don't do that with Under the Skin. With the elective course for the medical students, we don't grade them, so they don't get a grade. And I think that is also an important aspect of being free, and also to be able to engage in the process, or to be in this process, and to also celebrate being, or the process as something that is important, and not so much focus on the end product where you get a grade for. So that is one of the aspects where we do that to evaluate how they or to create actually what they did, to evaluate it. For example, in Under the Skin, we give them 4 questions. In this edition now that we just did, the second one, we asked them questions about experimenting. So 4 questions about what is an experiment, and these kind of like 4 different questions where they have to give more of a definition, more of a feeling what it is, and these kind of aspects of what an experiment for them is. And they do that at the beginning of the course. And we also ask them to answer the same questions at the end of the course, to see if they're what actually changed and how they relate to these things. And then, I mean, that's of course quite text-based evaluation. Ideally, I would take even more time and see them again. I'm now planning that with this edition of the group of the students that we just had, to see them again and to go somewhere with them again and to talk with them. And I'm also trying to get together a few of the edition that we did before the pandemic, because during the pandemic, we decided to not do the course because we didn't want to do it online. That I think these to have like comeback moments and to engage with people again and talk and have like this, create these situations again where you could simply see if it an experience, actually not see, but experience what it actually did with them, such a course. That for me would be ideal, but you don't always have time.
Sadly.
And, sadly, that is always this kind of struggle where you have to find a balance, I think, of what is possible and what is not. But that would be ideal, of course, to have like also to evaluate it in a way that it is an experience and not so much text-based, in the sense that you write something down. But it can also work. I mean, with these questions that we ask, and for example, for Under the Skin, we can see that their answers changed. and that is interesting. Then then it did already something, that they're looking at something in a different way than they did before, and then I'm already happy.
Yeah.
They broadened the way that they think about something, or and they hopefully carry that also out into how they hold themselves as a medical professional.
The question of evaluation is a good one, and it's a challenging one, I think. I mean, we have quite standardized evaluation criteria, quality criteria for the scientific part. So it's, the daily business. If I get the assignment in a written paper, to see did they consult sufficient literature, is the line of argument correct, and so on and so forth. It's becoming a little bit more tricky if you want to evaluate the sensory aesthetic product. And here, since I collaborate with the artists, of course, in art schools, they do have a kind of evaluation quality criteria. For example, is the complexity, the originality of the product in itself. And of course, it's like in qualitative research, very important, the documentation and reflection on the process by the student, so that they make transparent how they came up with their research and how they end up in a certain artifact.
Yeah.
But it's still, I think we are able with this, and the evaluation is done by myself and by the artist colleague. And I think in our evaluation, because we discuss about this as well, we can give reasonable grades, and we have arguments why perhaps one work is better than the others. But there is no, let's say, no established handbook how to evaluate this kind of scientific sensory learning and teaching results.
Yeah, I think that's tough, because I can tell you why it's tough, because I think at least the formal ways we use for evaluation do not allow for this kind of touchy-feely aspects of our courses. They're very rigid, very, serious looking. And in a way, these put students in a certain mood to respond in a certain way.
Yeah.
I think in my personal experience, the kind of teaching or education that is different from the norm, what they typically do, or to what they're typically exposed, the appreciation of these comes later. I think after they have completed their course, or after the course, after they have completed the program, or at least after the course has ended. Something like that. You said, oh, when you did the sticky notes 3 years ago, that was memorable. I think I had similar cases where they say, oh, I still remember that, which of course, what does it say? Probably not much, but I think this kind of aspects of your teaching, something that remains memorable, or something that helps students think in a particular way for a particular problem, I think this can be of benefit. I don't think that traditional ways of evaluating courses can work for evaluating sensory education. I think we need a new, I would say, methodological toolkit when it comes to evaluation. Probably even using sensory evaluation itself to evaluate sensory education. I think I don't think you can evaluate sensory education by having them respond to a questionnaire. Of course you can do that, but then you miss the whole point of sensory training, I think.
Yeah.
So I think in order to be able to evaluate senses, you have to use the senses somehow. So yeah, I think that would be ideal for me. And this is something I, at some point when I had to do my university teaching qualification, I did have a section where I wrote about evaluating courses, and I did talk about using design thinking as a means to evaluate courses. So as to make it lighter, but also, generate kind of more interesting responses to students. Because I think also students are extremely bored
Yeah.
of doing these IVO evaluations. I mean, I can clearly see that where you have 5 students, 5 vocal students doing the evaluation, the others do not bother. And then the vocal students becomes also the dominant narrative when it comes to the course, which is also wrong. So I think you need somehow to have more active ways to involve students in evaluation and using this kind of sensory dimension to mobilize them.
Well, if you for these crafting assignments, they build their own rubric, so they can tell me how I should evaluate them. It's a discussion, of course, right? So there's something on the creativity, there's something on the content, there's something about the quality, those kind of things. For the field work, for instance, for the plant recognition part, I evaluate them if they can tell me what plant they have and which characters belong there. So if a particular plant group has very rough hairs and it's very characteristic, they need to realize that while they're looking at their plant, they need to feel it, and then they know they need to be aware of what they are feeling, and that that this is this plant group with the very coarse hairs. So that's that. Or this is this plant group that looks like this, or that's that. Or it's a plant group that has a particular smell or has a stinging needle. So it's a nettle, for instance. That whole plant group is characterized by these stinging hairs. So if you rub it and you feel stings, then you know it's that group. So that is sort of inherent then in the assignment. In order to tell me what it is, you need to engage with your senses, because only doing one thing, you will not get to the right answer, because the answer consists of touch and smell and vision and different type of things.
So we have the assessment program about programmatic assessment. So that is instead of having one time at the end of the year a practical skills education, we gather throughout the whole year information about the development of their as well clinical skills, but also for communication, consultation, reflection skills. So a student will have in year 1 and year 2, several times a year, a teacher feedback session for their clinical skills, where in pairs they get an assignment and they perform that assignment and they show their skills.
Yeah.
And the skills coach will evaluate that at the end of that teacher feedback session with the student to see, okay, what went well, what are some attention points, and to discuss that, and also to discuss that and to write it down in the assessment form of the teacher feedback session, and it will be part of their portfolio. So the student knows, okay, am I on track, yes or no? But also to receive feedback to know, okay, what is needed for me to develop my skills? What are my goals and how can I learn? And if there are some difficulties, or a student find how do I learn my skill, there is a possibility that the student will contact their skills coach and that there is intermittent guidance. So that to see also on the process, okay, what are your constraints? What are your goals? What are your actions from that? But also on the content wise, what do you really learn? And to also empower the skills coach with the experiences he and she has, an expert, to support also the content. So a student can benefit from that part, that there is a skills coach and that there is intermittent guidance. So, and that's also a bit my vision about it, that you're able to learn, and we create an environment to learn. And of course, we expect an active participation and an open attitude to learn.
Yeah.
And then the skills coach can contribute, or the core teacher can contribute. And when it goes beyond that part of skills, you can say, okay, refer and discuss it with your mentor or your student advisor. Yeah. So we have different roles. But coming back to the programmatic assessment, there is no pass-fail decision at one point. So throughout the year, you will get information as a skills coach about the development of the skills of your student. And we are also in the process of, could we create more information points? Teacher feedback session, intermittent guidance, maybe there is also a knowledge of skills test. And not by pass failing, but it gives you information. So it gives you from different perspectives information from that student. So it is in line with what is programmatic assessment. It's also from the student perspective that there are more data points, not only my teacher feedback session. And from the skills coach, do I have enough information to say, are you on track at the end of the year with the information points you have? So in one way, it should never be a surprise at the end of the year where the student is, or what we, in the end, to say, okay, are you pass, fail, or good, or are you above expectations, according to the language we use? But it should not be a surprise, not for the skills coach, not for the student, because it happens in between, in the journey throughout the whole year.
Yeah.
So having those teacher feedback sessions, of having those contacts during your training session, you give student feedback, or the student is able to ask feedback. And there you can, of course, in one way play with, is the student conscious about what they do?
Yeah.
And how they do it, and why they do it. And do they do it in a proper manner? And are they able to find a language to report that back to you?
Let's, yeah, you can evaluate on different levels. I would say I will not talk about the evaluation in the exam evaluation, for instance. I will talk about an evaluation with a student after we just did a exercise, for instance. And the evaluation will always be a question that is small enough for them to answer. It's never a trick question. For instance, when we are working on sound in relation to breathing support, you do a certain exercise and there is a certain result. The result of the exercise is sometimes the effort of the student, sometimes the talent of the student, but in at least 50% of the times, it is the abilities of the teacher or the formulation of the exercise. So the assessment, the evaluation of a particular exercise that I just did is always a question to be answered by the student. I tried to do this and this and this. What do you think you did? I don't know. Well, let's do it again. I hear that you improved. What do you think you hear? Oh, well, I still don't know. Well, let's do it again. And then I start to become more detailed. Can you hear, for instance, the first two overtones, the first three harmonics? Oh yeah, can you sing them? Oh yeah, that's there. Ah, and when you sing it like that, no, it's gone. Okay, so that's how I evaluate. It's a continuous back and forth of what do you experience, what do I try to do. Yeah, and it's supposed to go that way because otherwise I have only one way of asking a question. The student fails in performing my exercise, and I get frustrated because the student is so stupid that. So yeah, and basically I'm testing myself as much as the student. That is exhausting, but that is also the only way to go in my profession, I think.